What's up guys, this is Ben. Welcome back to our January Lightroom tutorial series. This is week number 2 and today we're going through a simple edit in Lightroom Classic of a photo. Start to finish from import all the way to export. If you haven't seen last week's video, it was all about the differences between Lightroom Classic and Lightroom CC. So if you're unsure about the two of them, I'll be linking it right up here if you want to go check that out. But I'll also link it in the description if you want to go and check that out later on. So I'm a big fan of Lightroom Classic. I'm not really much of a fan of Lightroom CC. So I may end up doing a similar video to this in Lightroom CC later on. But most of the focus of the tutorial month is all about Lightroom Classic because that's what I use all the time. And that's what I'm most proficient in. And I think that's what most people are looking into anyways these days. But if you're looking for a tutorial series all about Lightroom CC, let me know in the comments because maybe I'm just out of touch and I don't know what people want. But let's get into it. Lightroom Classic, here we have an empty screen with no photos imported. Here I have my SD card full of juicy photos ready to be edited. So I'm going to just pop that into my 2015 MacBook Pro, which has a built-in SD card reader, and go down to this bottom left button here called import. And then Lightroom Classic is going to notice that I just plugged in a SD card and it's going to automatically open up the import dialog. So I'm going to go and find the folder with all of my photos. Here we have them. I'm going to uncheck them all and I'm only going to find a few of the good photos that I have here. I'm not going to edit each one today, but basically you're just going to check which one you want to import. So I'm going to click, shift click and check, and that'll check mark all of these here. So I've got all of these photos that I'm going to import. If I want to, I can rename these files. I can apply some of these presets, add keywords, and I can also save them into a specific folder because it's on an SD card. So with this window, I can also copy these photos into a hard drive if I want to. So finally, once I'm all happy with my selection here, I'm going to go and click on import. It's going to look at these photos and bring them into Lightroom, and now I can eject my card. So here I have all these photos in Lightroom. I'm going to click on this button to make it full screen, and I'm just going to go through and find which one is my favorite. This is the Peace Tower right here from the Ottawa Parliament buildings. And I'm just going to go through and pick which one is my favorite. You can use the keys 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to star them different ratings. You can also use the letter P to flag it as a pick, and then U as to unflag it. And then you can also use the numbers 9, 8, 7, and 6 to label them in different colors. So here we can see I have this labeled as red. And then 0 unstars them, and then clicking 6 again will remove that color. So that's one way to rate all of the photos while you're going through them. So once I've chosen a photo, there are a few settings that I can go through and add comments, change the metadata, add some keywords, and do some quick developing. But I'm just going to go straight to the Develop tab. Here we can see we have all of our little modules to work within. So first, what I'm going to do is enable profile corrections. This just fixes any impurities with the lens that you're working with. Here we can see that within the metadata, it knows what lens I was working in, and Lightroom has a profile for that. And when I enable it, it changes the photo based on the impurities of the lens. And that's actually this lens here. This is the Sony 18-105 f4 power zoom. I just made a video about it recently, so you can go and check that out. One of these corners. I think it's this one here. So right there. I'm going to enable that. It's going to fix up some things. You can remove chromatic aberration if you want. Basically, with chromatic aberration, it's when some less quality lenses will have some green or purple or maybe some blue on the edges of some harsher lines, and this just tries to get rid of it. But sometimes that doesn't do the best, so you can go into manual and defringe with all of these sliders here. But zooming in, I'm not really seeing much of that going on, so I'm going to go ahead and ignore chromatic aberration. So let's get into this. I'm going to go ahead and raise the exposure a little bit. I'm going to cool it down a little bit. And the buildings look a little bit green, so I'm going to push it just a little bit over to the pink. I also think I'm going to move the profile to Adobe Landscape. It's just going to pop the colors a little bit better in this photo, so I think that looks good already. You can see the difference by pressing I think that's with the backslash, the one that's not paired with the question mark right under the delete or backspace key. From there, if you really want to, you can just go ahead and click on auto settings, but it seems like it's blowing out the photo a little bit, so I'm going to do this manually. So you can see that I'm zooming in by clicking on the photo, but you can also do that by pressing the spacebar. And this will go in, you can see here we go between fit or fill, which is filling the width of the photo frame here. I usually stick to fit. And then it goes between either 100% or whatever preset you have here. So we can go all the way back to 6%, all the way into 1600%. So you can change the amount that you want to zoom in and out of. You don't have to stick to one specific percentage. Sometimes you want to, but I'm going to bring this back to 200%. Select 100, and now whenever we press spacebar, it goes between fit and 100. So for this photo, I think I'm going to go for a little bit more of a creative edit than a more maybe realistic edit. So we can play around with our highlights. Watching the histogram here, this is going to change depending on what edits we make here. But since it's going to be a creative edit, I can just basically do what I want and not have to worry about exactly what this says. I will try and make sure that the black isn't clipping. You can see here that we've got too much black in this section here. When we click on this little arrow, we can get a preview of the clipped blacks, which turns to a little gross blue. So we want to make sure that if we don't want any clipping, we select this little arrow here, and then we raise the blacks up until there's no more blue, or at least not much blue. Right here at 27 on this photo is no clipping. And then obviously you can do the same with white, but there's anywhere close to clipping. If we go way up high here, we can see that we're starting to clip in where it turns red. Not a very nice look, so I'm just going to zero that back down, unselect this, and continue with the edit. So I will go up a little bit on the whites just to make the photo pop a little bit more. I actually think I might pull the highlights all the way down, but then boost the whites a little bit more. Throw in a little bit of contrast, dehaze to make the sky pop a little bit more. And I'm going to lower the clarity and texture for now, and then I'll bring that back later on. I'm going to boost the vibrance just a little bit and then equalize that by lowering the saturation. This is a look that I usually go for by raising the vibrance and lowering saturation. It's not what everyone does. It's not like the best or worst technique to do. This is just what I like to do. So that's basically using everything in the basic tab here. We can go to tone curve. Within here, we can select this little button and select a specific area on our photo. We can see that as we're moving around, there's a little dot on the tone curve following the luminance of the specific point that we're hovering over. And then if we just click, that'll select a little point based on the exact luminance that we clicked on. And then if we click and drag, we select that dot and then we can raise it and lower it based on that specific area of the tone curve. So if we wanted to lower the sky a bit, but then maybe raise back the shadows in the building, we can do it like that. Or we can just do the normal way of clicking on the tone curve and dragging on the line. So I'm actually not too happy with that tone curve, so I'm just going to double click on each point to set them back where they're supposed to. And I'm just going to do a simple S curve to add a little bit extra contrast. Maybe raise the blacks just a tiny little bit to create a little bit more of a faded look. You can see it added just a little bit of contrast, but not untasteful, if you will. Next, I'm going to go to the HSL and color tab. Basically, if you want to see only specific colors altogether, we can go to the color part. Basically, the difference between HSL and color is just how they're grouped differently. I usually stick to HSL though. So here, HSL is going to work with hue, changing the color value of a specific color along the amount of hue that you're pushing it to. So we can see that selecting green and pushing it towards aqua will make the green roofs turn a little bit more blue or aqua. Same if we push it to yellow. So I'm actually going to push it a little bit more to aqua to accentuate the green in these roofs. There's also a lot of yellowy green in this building that I want to push a little bit more to orange. Same with orange, I'm going to make sure there's less yellow and more red. There's not really any red other than in the flag, so we can keep it there. We've got some purple in the sky. I think I'm going to push it to pink just to create a little bit more of an interesting sky than just a full blue sky. I'm going to push the blue a little bit more towards purple to make it a little bit more of a clear blue instead of an aqua and blue look. And there's not any magenta here. There's a bit of aqua in the sky here. I'll just push it back to blue. This is what it looks like without HSL and with. So there's a decent amount going on here. I can go over to saturation. I'm going to desaturate yellow. Quite a decent amount, I'd say. I don't want to have too much color in this building, so I'm not going to desaturate orange as well. Again, red is only the flag, so there's not much I need to do there. I like the green roof a lot, so I'm going to pump it up a little bit more. Play around with the saturation of the blue and aqua to make a bit more of a vibrant looking sky. I'm going to pump up the purple to add a little bit more interest going on in the sky there. And then I guess there's a little bit of magenta back there as well. So that's all the saturation, and then finally we have luminance as well. You'll notice that each of these tabs also have this little button. Same as the tone curve, you can select this and click on a specific point in the photo and drag up and down to select. And that'll change any color. So this color that I selected has a little bit of yellow and a lot more green. So it's changing yellow and green at the same time. So from here, I'm going to raise the luminance of the yellow and green. I'm going to darken the red a little bit. I'm going to lower the luminance of the orange and raise the yellow to create a little bit more of an interesting look in these buildings. I'm going to darken the aqua, brighten the blue a little bit, darken the purple, and raise the magenta. So finally, with all these edits in the HSL tab, this is what it looks like with and without. So we're getting a pretty good way with these edits. Next is color grading. I made a whole video all about color grading and how this panel works, so I'm not going to go too much into detail, and I actually don't think I'm going to use this too much. I might throw in just a tiny little bit of blue into the shadows, darken them just a tiny little bit. Midtones, I think I actually might go orange in the midtones here. We can see that affects the sky a lot. So just a little bit of orange, and just pump them up a little bit. And then in the highlights, there's not a whole lot of highlights in this image, but we'll also push those to orange as well. And we'll raise them up a little bit. You raise me up. So not a whole lot going on in the color grading tab, but I use this a little bit more sparingly. Next up, we could go to the detail tab, select this little target icon to change where you want to see all your detail, but I usually just zoom in a lot more. I'm going to hold Alt or Option, change the amount of masking going on here, so I'm not sharpening literally everything. Change my masking, change up the radius. Won't go too overboard with this, so we can see that there's a lot of noise being added to the photo when I do this, but change up the noise reduction, add some detail. I'm going to pump up the color noise reduction as well. So if I turn this tab off and if we zoom even further to 200%, you can see that there's a lot of like splotches within this one color. I can even zoom in even more to show this. This pink is really not a solid pink, so this is what color noise looks like. So if we enable the color noise and then disable just the color noise, we can see it come back in full force. So this is why I pumped up the color noise reduction just a little bit more. So now it looks like a really smooth image. We can turn this off and back on again. We can see there's a ton of color noise in the sky here. It looks quite gross. So turning this detail on makes it nice and smooth. I'm okay with this look. It looks a little bit fake, so we might pull down the noise reduction a little bit and backen up our sharpening as well. So here's the before and after so far. We're looking pretty good. Lens correction, transform effects. I'm going to add a pretty significant vignette with a lot of feather, tiny little midpoint, add the highlights all the way in, and back this up a little bit more. And what I forgot to do was crop this photo, so I'm going to go up here to the crop. I'm going to go to the Instagram aspect ratio, which is 4:5. If your photo is a long landscape, you can press X to rotate this crop overlay, and it's just going to go back and forth like that. So I'm going to fit these buildings within this frame and center this flag line with the center line. I'm going to press enter when I'm done here, and this is the final crop. I'm going to make sure that the vignette that I added still looks good here. So there's also roundness that I didn't do, so I can try and change that up as well. The reason I did that was because I didn't want much vignetting to happen on the clock face. Finally, we have calibration. This is really hard for me to explain, but basically, I think I might end up making a whole video just about the calibration tab. I only ever use this for creative purposes. I don't really use it to actually calibrate things properly. So with just a few small edits within the calibration tab, this is what it looks like with and without it. So it made the colors pop a little bit more. I'm pretty happy with that. So this is I'm going to say that I'm happy with this edit. There's a little bit more I could have done, and I think I'm going to make a more advanced photo edit video later this month. So stay tuned and subscribe if you haven't already to see that one. But this is the before and after of this photo edit. Clearly there's a lot of color changes that we did. There's the vignette, there's a lot of sharpening. If we zoom in, there's a lot of noise in the original photo that still is a little bit there, but we don't really need to pixel peep too much here. So I didn't use any filters or brushes or anything like that. I didn't change the transformation settings. So there's still a lot more that I could have done to this photo, but stay tuned for the next few videos where I'll be going through probably almost every developed setting that you could in Lightroom on a single photo, just to show off the immense power that Lightroom can have on one photo edit. So that is it for me today. This is a single photo basic edit in Lightroom, week 2 of the January Lightroom tutorial series. So next week's video is all about my top tips for Lightroom Classic, so make sure you subscribe and drop a like if you like this video. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.